So I have a project here, John Deere 5510. Had a loader and a bale in the back, and I guess it's overloaded and it cracked between the engine, as you can see, and clutch case. I was looking on YouTube how to remove the cab. In order to change all that, work on that, you gotta remove the cab. And in life you have to improvise, and I don't have a lot of money to pay the dealer to do it, so I'm doing it myself. So I had some construction scaffolding. I did had some wheels on them, put plywood underneath so it won't sink. It's got soft ground, but you have to improvise. There is actually a beam on the top, okay, and then there is a jack, a crane that you pull on the chains, and there's these hooks on the top of the hood. There's these 5/8 eye bolts you put in there, and as you can see, there's chain across there. And so what I did, I work with what I have, and I got the cab almost off. See, this is where you unbolt here. You unbolt, take the glass off, and you unbolt down here, right there. Unplug all the wires. Get the battery thing off, fuel lines off. These bolts on the side here, you gotta take them off, and then the bolts here, you gotta take them off. Of course, you gotta get the tires off because this thing will go up over this, and then the oil right there, hydraulic, and you gotta get it up there, and then in order to remove this cab, you gotta move it towards the back. So that's why I have plywood on the bottom, wheels, and I'm gonna pull it with the tractor. So it's working. The jack is holding up, the beam is holding up. Can't be that heavy. I mean, it's probably 600 pounds, maybe 900 pounds cab, which scaffolding will hold it no problem. And I think, oh, there's a ton. A jack is a ton, so 2,000 pounds right there. If you can see it, maybe you can't see. I just got chains. So sometimes in life you have to improvise. Of course, you gotta take these bolts here, big ones, off, and then you gotta take the electricity off right there, that little switch right there off. That's where that tank or the seed sensor comes in. I can't remember. And then you gotta take, of course, there's same bolts here. You gotta take right here, those off. And then you gotta take those bolts off. And then there is a AC coming in here, so I'll show you. Remove the inside corner, and yeah, and so unplug those wires. And there is AC lines right here. No, I'm gonna show you. See if I can see. There's AC lines right here. You cover them up so you don't want dirt, dust coming in here. So this job the purpose of this job is to take this cab off, the floor off, which is later, and then replace this transmission case or clutch case. See how that crack is right there, and that's going from this side to the other side. Yeah, so that's what happens. It's overloaded, and so that's my project. Hopefully somebody can use this. You don't need a huge crane or anything. You can do this yourself at home. Just scaffolding. Of course, if you don't have scaffolding and the wheels on it, it's a little difficult to pull this thing off, but that's doable, and I make it work with what I have. I'll record a little bit later when I take this cab off. So now I lifted about 5 inches of the floor, and I got that supported, but I forgot to do one thing, is unbolt those 3 bolts. Okay, right here, they're holding the seat. They're bolted to the floor to make sure you get those off too. I forgot to do that, and I'm just struggling, but it's working good. Another thing I had to do is I had to put additional beam on top, so I got 2 beams. Okay, I was just not too sure about one beam, and And also check everything as you go up little by little. You gotta check everything, make sure nothing is attached or got caught on something, because you can really damage something here. Okay, here's another side. Let's lift it up about 4 or 5 inches, okay, from there. So this is what the front looks like, okay? It's coming off that frame right there. I'll continue. So after unbolting the seat, you can see it went up really easy because the seat was holding it up. So you want to raise the cab high enough to clear that right here. See that tank, gas, diesel tank, and then that little oil, hydraulic oil stick right there. The cap used to be about that, and now I'm gonna pull it back with the tractor. So this is the deal. I pulled it. I'm gonna pull it slowly. 2 beams are holding up pretty good. I got, what do I have? 4x5 beam and then 4x6 beam up on top. 2 of those. And what else? And I had to improvise a little bit on the top of the cab. I used, since the eye bolts are pulling together, I had to put a 4x4 in there to keep them apart, as you can see that. Hopefully you can see that. The best idea is to have 2 jacks, 2 cranes, 1 for each bolt, but I have only 1, so I gotta improvise. So we shall continue. The cab is on the ground, as you can see the end result. So it's pretty simple. The cab is not that heavy. If you detach all the bolts, I had to unscrew the seat and left it behind. But yeah, so that system worked really good. Now I got it sitting on the 6x6 blocks. Yeah, so there we go. Yeah, the tractor pulled it really easy. This plywood does help, and this is it. End result, what I wanted to do with this cab. See, this is what I had to do to the top of it. See that? Pretty much, see how my eye bolts are bent? Because I had 2x4 in there, and then I had to, okay, that didn't work. It cracked my 2x4, so I had to do a 4x4 with little metal on each end, as you can see, so it would not come in. But yeah, it bent the bolts. 5/8 diameter bolts, it bent. That's how heavy it was. Okay, so there it is. Scaffolding's amazing. Did the job wonderfully. Yep, and so here we go. Now I can take the floor off little by little. We get to this clutch housing. Thanks for watching. We'll continue. Here I am back working on the project John Deere 5510. I removed the cab, I removed the floor, left and right console, the seat, the front steering wheel, whatever it's called. In order to remove the floor after the cab, you gotta remove the floor. Top of the floor, there's a bunch of bolts, but then you gotta remove these brackets that are attached here on each side. In order to remove the floor, you gotta take left and right consoles off, because you gotta lift it and it's gonna be in your way. All you have to do is take these knobs off, just pull them off right here on each side. Don't touch these. They're screwed in from the top. You remove this cap, and then there's this Allen wrench type of bolt that's on the side of this knob, so make sure you get that and don't damage it. Here's the boot of one side, the left side. Anyway, so you have to take this and that off in order to lift the floor up. It's heavy. And here's the floor. I'll show you what the floor looks like. Yes, there it is. This is the floor. So this is the those big mounting bolts that you'll find. This is the battery side. There's an axis for the battery. But you gotta take all these bolts off. This is where the seats mounts to. Yeah, take all these bolts off. All these. And it's pretty heavy. Now you have to take the joystick off too. This is where the joystick attaches. You gotta take that off, otherwise you won't be able to remove the floor. You gotta remove the floor. Here's the battery box. You gotta remove the battery box. Just the bolts on top, whatnot. Anyway, so that's the floor. It's heavy. Two-man job. I managed with one. So next thing you need to do after you move the floor, you need to remove the steering console, which sits right here. It just bolts right there, bolts in the back, but you gotta remove everything, all the hoses, separate this side from this side, all the hydraulic hoses. Down there you gotta remove the accelerator thing of a jigger here. I removed this one here. So you gotta pretty much separate everything like that. This is the hydraulic to the steering main input. Okay, let me go on the other side. This is the steering, front steering hoses. You gotta disconnect those. Let's see, let me show you what it's look like on this side here. So I didn't remove the fuel filter. I didn't remove any of this stuff. You gotta disconnect these. Let's see. I disconnected this one here. Okay, this is where the separation is. You can see my crack right here. Follows that across here. It goes across the top and over. I think it's engineering issue here, but I'm not gonna. That's my opinion. You gotta remove the drive shaft from there, there's a plastic piece cover, and you just unbolt those things and this comes off, and there's like this pin at each end right there. Just remove all that and disconnect that. What else? Yeah, here's another detaching piece there. Then you gotta loosen these bolts. This is my next project, is that replacing that, separating. So what I'm gonna do is, my idea is to use this crane right here, and I will pull it forward, and I'm gonna attach it here. I'm gonna attach it to these bolts here. This is where actually you want to attach your cable or your lift chain, whatnot. Probably to this bolt and to this bolt. I'm gonna try to attach some kind of bracket to lift, and then the other side is pretty easy. And I'm gonna try to lift the front off and pull this forward while this is stationary, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I have this piece already used. I'm gonna replace that, which is, here's the piece. I'll show you the piece. Here it is. I bought it from a guy, and it came with the rear axle and the transmission and everything. It came all together, and this is what it looks like inside. If you're curious, the shaft, this is PTO shaft, and then inside here is a traction or whatever they call it shaft. So there's two shafts in one. This one makes a spin, the back spin, and this one makes the tractor drive. This is the bearings here. So this is what cracked right here, but this is good. And so what I'm gonna do, unbolt it here. I'm gonna salvage this for future if I need any parts, but if anybody needs parts, get a hold of me. I got parts for that right there. That section I won't need, but this is what I need from there to there. I'm gonna lift this up, unbolt it, and hopefully move it to this tractor here. We shall continue. I'll record the progress of separating that engine from clutch case. To be continued. Again, working on the tractor. Last night they separated the front engine from clutch case. Right here, that's the broken part, as you can see right there. See that, little pieces? Anyways, this is where your clutch is at, and the flywheel is right there. Right there. So this is what I did, and now I got jacks underneath that holding it up. What I did is I used this 1-ton crane. Worked beautifully. I moved it here because it was standing right there with the cab. I moved it here, and there's my straps. I attached it here at the bolts. There's a bolt here. I attached it here, and I'll show you what I did on the other side real quick. Side here, what I did, instead of taking a bunch of bolts and parts out, I just kind of got this strap around this bracket, and then around this bracket and around here, and that is attached to the engine block, so that is attached there, and it worked. This thing's not that heavy. A lot of weight is sitting on the axle, and this is just balancing, you know, lifting up is balancing. But here's your starter. This is the breakage right here on this side. There's your shafts. What I want to point out here is when you're gonna split the engine, you have to put a piece of block here for the pivot. This is a pivot stop right here, frame and pivot stop. Make sure you have a block, and that block actually is continuous, as you can see, from one end to the other, so it won't pivot on you, because you don't want to have this flop around when you're lifting it. Anyways, so that's the job that was done yesterday. Today my job is to take that off, unbolt here, take that off, and then put a new part on, and I'll be recording as I go. But yeah, it worked out really well. And so what you do is you unbolt those big bolts on each. There's like 6 of them, I believe, and then you just push on the wheels to go forward. And yeah, pretty simple to split this up. I shall be continued on this. Hope it helps you when you watch it. So I got the clutch case off. Alright, I removed that shaft and placed it here. And this is, I'm just testing it, what's wrong. So looks like the transmission is okay, because as I spin the wheel, this thing, and it's in gear, this thing turns. PTO, when I spin, this thing turns. That tells me that the transmission seems to be working just fine. So I believe it's the clutch housing is an issue. But then again, I have no idea what's inside the clutch housing. Of course, you got the clutch levers and shifters are here, and that's fine, working fine. This is just a bearing, gear on the bearing. This is just a bearing. This is just a bearing. Also, I think there's something wrong, I think, between this one and the shaft. I just can't pinpoint to what is the problem, but I think think this right here is kind of wobbly. Could be an issue. Down here, the actual clutch is looking fine. I'm gonna test it a little bit more closely, look at it closely, and see what could be the problem. But I don't know, looking fine to me. Anyways, we'll continue to investigate. This is what the transmission looks like. See that? This thing removes, this thing removes, this thing removes. Anyways, I don't want to mess with it. Alright, so this is definitely got to be replaced. We'll take a step at a time and we'll continue. So finally I got the clutch casing off, and you unbolt here. Okay, this is temporary. I put it in to test the transmission. So what I did is I got that in the first gear, put 2 bolts in here so I can put this big rod in here to turn, because you can't turn by hand. And I was turning this, and this was turning, so that tells me the transmission is in good shape, it's working. Okay, and then I turned the PTO in the back with my hand, and this thing also is turning. Perfect. One thing I want to point out is when you're taking this clutch casing off, you got your crane, and it worked perfectly. The crane worked perfectly. Make sure you separate from here to here far enough that you can remove it easily. I didn't do it. I didn't do enough, and I had to turn this clutch housing to make it fit through all this hosing, piping, and it was kind of difficult. I wish I moved this thing another 4 inches back. Lesson learned. Okay, next thing, make sure you have this shifter, your gear shifter on neutral, in this position here. Let's see, right here. See how it's right in neutral? It's hard to see. Let's see. See how there is a second gear and reverse? You gotta have a shifter right there at neutral, right on the end. So what I did is, at least that's what John Deere wants you to do. I don't know what for, but so I got this bungee thing is holding it in that position. I don't know whether it's doing something here or not. I'm not sure, but everything's looking good here, nice and solid. So let's go. I'll tell you what the problem was. So I was driving, actually my father-in-law was driving it with a bale on the back, and while it's in motion, it stopped by itself. He didn't touch any gears, nothing. It's just the engine was working, it just stopped. On a flat road, on a flat field, stopped. Then I started investigating. I found the problem where this thing cracked. Of course, that's because it's been overloaded. But that's not an issue. Why it stopped is because this clutch housing there's a broken shaft in the clutch housing. This is the main shaft right here. It goes in here. All right. But this one is sheared off. See how it's wobbling? See how it's wobbling? It's sheared off. It's sheared off somewhere in the middle right down here. Because this is, if you look into this hole, okay, it's kind of hard to see, but you can see, you can't see through it. There's something that's blocking it. Well, that's where it's sheared. And this is a new part, or used new part. And as you can see, look at that. It's beautiful. You can see right through it. Nothing's blocking that hole. And if you go in and wobble this shaft here, Look how solid it is. It doesn't wobble at all. It doesn't wobble. It kind of moves forward and back, but doesn't go up and down. It's solid. Where this one, look at that. Up and down, side to side. It doesn't really go back and forth. It's sheared off. It's definitely sheared off. That's the problem right there. So the problem is that in the middle it's sheared off. So now I figured out the issue here. I'm just safe to put this back. I know the clutch is working fine. I didn't have any slippage on the clutch. But yeah, so apparently this is a shaft for PTO, and that's a shaft for traction, for moving forward. So because my PTO was working, but it stopped while it was driving, so that means that shaft cracked, sheared off. Anyways, I'm 99.9% sure that's the shaft that's broken. Anyway, so now what I need to do is start putting back this piece here. You gotta order this gasket. It's like 20 bucks with shipping or something like that. You need a gasket for here, brand new one. Okay, and then while you're ordering a gasket, get yourself O-rings that go on the bottom of those AC pipes. You need 2 O-rings because that's gonna leak if you use the old ones. Anyhow, there's some good parts on here. If anybody needs some gears or whatnot, the bearings, some good parts, reach out to me. I can hook you up with some good parts. And the clutch, all this stuff here still shifts. As you can see, all this stuff is moving. Alright, see that? It's still engaging, so it's not an issue here. It's an issue somewhere in here, between here. It's sheared off. Alright, glad I found this issue, this problem. Now, we'll have to put all this together. That's gonna be, should be too bad actually. I know what I'm doing now, so I hope I don't have any extra bolts or parts left behind after I get this all together. That's the case usually. Alright, to be continued. So I wanted to see where that shaft sheared off, and here is the shaft. So in order to take the shaft off, you need to take the shifters off. You unbolt these and pull all this out, unbolt this, and these shafts right here need to be hammered out from these. Just take something like this, you know, and just hammer them out, but don't do it too hard. Make sure you use a block underneath of them, okay, because it's gonna bend down. It's gonna have a hard time to. Anyways, I got it out, and then this was here, okay, like that. This is how it was. Okay, you take all this stuff out, and what I did, I pulled it, and voila, sheared off. Okay, this is the back side of the shaft. This is the front side of the shaft. See that? There's a bearing sheared off right there. Maybe again it's an engineering issue. Why it was shear right here? This is thicker right here. This is the thinnest portion of it, as you can see. See how it's becomes thinner here, and it sheared off right there. A weak point. That's a weak point on the tractor right here. So that's it. That's the shaft. Now I'm 100% sure what the problem is, and knowing that this is 100% is the problem, I know everything else is working good out there. So this is the good part. So you have to take all this stuff off. Take these bolts off, and then this bar needs to come out, and this is all pulls forward, and you just remove it. And then what you need to do is take the shaft. Well, to remove the shaft, if it's in one piece, then you got to push it towards the back, because there's a gasket Here's the gasket. It's hard to see. This gasket right here, yeah, you gotta kind of pull it towards the back of the tractor to remove this whole rod, or what do you call it? Drive shaft, or whatever you call this thing. Whatever this thing is called. Anyways, that's it. That's the problem. That's the problem. So, two issues with this clutch housing. It's not strong enough on the top, and that shaft is also not beefy enough. Okay, we'll continue. One thing I forgot to tell you is this shaft here, that's an extra shaft left over from a previous clutch housing. This is a PTO shaft that sits inside the clutch housing. I have an extra one if anybody needs it in good shape. But what I forgot to tell you is they want you to apply grease to it. So I got this EP Moly high temperature grease from O'Reilly's, and just apply really good on top of the shaft, because this shaft fits inside the traction shaft, which traction shaft is a pipe. Okay, so you want to have grease between this shaft and the other shaft. Okay, and then also put some grease here that will help you engage the clutch, and then engage. So this is the clutch side. Okay, it moves here, you know, the but this is the transmission side, so you want to put a little bit of grease, a little bit on here, not too much, but definitely put grease on here, and that'll help you engage on the clutch and everything like that. But yeah, this is something I forgot to tell you, is do that when you assemble the clutch housing and stuff like that. Okay. Another day working on John Deere 5510. So I have installed the clutch housing with all the guts, steering console, floor brackets. So the first thing is pretend this is not here. You gotta install this. I had a crane right in here nicely. Push this against the engine, the clutch, and then there is a bearing. So I had to turn this one a little bit to have it fit, and then you can also remove this guy here and put a screwdriver and turn the flywheel, okay, to get that gear, this gear to go on there. Okay, make sure your clutch housing is level with the engine. Okay, so this got to be level, and there's 4 bolts, actual 6 bolts. All right, see, I got these bolts in. The torque on these babies are about 235 foot-pounds. They're crazy tight. Of course, I don't have exact wrench to do that, so I kind of did my best with extension bar. Now in here you gotta order a gasket which looks like this. All right, and that goes in here. It's like 20 bucks. And then these bolts, you gotta torque these babies up between 90 and 105 or 08 torque on these guys, which I have a wrench to do that, so this is gonna get done right. Okay, what I want to point out is don't be in a hurry installing this guy. These things go first. After you got the clutch housing installed, make sure you get this thing mounted first. Okay, there's bolts in here. Make sure this is mounted before you put this on both sides. There's actually bolts on the other side here. Okay, that goes after clutch. These things go. All the brackets, and then you can set this baby down. Okay. And then this one, had to tighten this guy here. This is the main supply, hydraulic. Here's your brakes. These are, I kind of loosen them a little bit because I need to do more adjustments. Plug in these main electrical connectors. Okay, make sure you get this thing. Oh, before you get this installed, make sure you mount this bracket here. It's there's 2 bolts. I don't know if you can see them. Yep, there's 1, 2, and 3. Make sure you get this installed before you get this on there, because it's gonna be pain, you know what. All right, so my next task is to install the gasket, and then close this engine down, and which I'm gonna use a crane. I'm gonna push on the wheels and should come in easily, and then get that installed. So far it's looking good. To be continued. Okay, I got it on. Struggled a little bit. A few things you gotta watch for is this gasket does not have the same bolt pattern. I had this gasket upside down. Okay, so make sure when you put this thing, it's rotated the proper way. Otherwise I had to take it all apart again and then rotate this gasket and then put that back in. But make sure these pins, one on top, one on the bottom, go in first. Well, kind of first. There is these 2, I don't know if you can see those or not. There's 2 pins for, there we go, those 2 pins right there. Make sure they go into the holes inside the clutch housing. Now, don't forget to make sure you have bearings, one on the bottom and one on the main shaft. Make sure those go into the clutch housing. And then what I did is I strapped it here, see that? Ratchet. And I ratcheted here, kind of pull it together, and then what I did is I kind of wobbled this, pushed on it, pushed on it, pushed on it. This crane has some angle to it, also pushing it back, and it came in nicely. Okay. Sometimes you have to put a screwdriver in here and turn the flywheel, and then you also have to PTO, turn that too. The clutch, I mean the shifter has to be on reverse, on R. Okay, the R. Make sure you have that on a reverse. That what happens is it pulls the pin out, one of them, so you can engage that hole. And make sure this one's in neutral. So yeah, now I have it almost tight. I'm gonna put the bolts in. And this project's pretty much done. I'm continuing on installing the floor. That's my next step. Okay, and don't forget to put this in. This thing goes in here. Okay. All right, what else I want to tell you? Yeah, I guess the biggest thing, make sure the gasket is in the right position and the bearings are in the inside the pockets. But yeah, it's coming along pretty good. I'm putting all the wires together and all the hoses. Just be mindful that each of these connectors have a little rubber O-ring gasket thing on each of these hydraulic hoses, like here, everywhere where you have, where I had to disconnect, especially right here, there is these O-rings. Okay, so make sure they're not missing, otherwise they'll leak. Also, I had to, in order to remove the steering console from the engine of this whole thing, I had to cut this wire, the purple wire. I had to use the splicer here, you can see it, and a heat shrink tube to fix it, but I had to cut it because it is attached here, and this wire is part of the steering console and the rest of it is part of the engine. So I don't know why it's like this, and it's coming to this one connector here, so like this one right here, this purple wire. So not sure why that is, but that's something I had to do. And so you just splice it, and then get yourself a bunch of these guys, because I had to cut at every location. Here's your fuel lines, so you have to put the ties, cable ties on all of it here, and on the back side of the electrical wire, so it won't just be tangling up, laying on the ground or whatnot. It needs to be nice and tight. See, all this I have to attach it, okay, with the cable tie. All right, so I'm gonna put some tape, electrical tape on this stuff, just to kind of cover it up, but this is it. And then I'll have to replace this guy here. Yeah, this was butchered pretty bad. This one is okay, just a copper piping, copper tube I gotta cut up. But yeah, this is make sure you get this installed right, this wiring harness. Make sure it's going in the right spot. There's a ground connector, and this one's going to the seat, this one's going to the back of the tank, and then make sure you connect all these pieces here. Let's see what else. So yeah, so all these hydraulic connections, there's O-rings on each one of those, okay? So make sure you don't this I gotta hook up yet, but don't forget to check, make sure there's a O-ring gasket sealer thing. Okay, well, this is where the status is at. I'm gonna put the floor on, and then the steering consoles, the shifter console, left and right, I'm gonna put that on next. So yeah, to be continued. I got the floor in. So a little trick on the floor. To install this floor, I didn't want to remove the shaft, the shifter, because it was catching on this edge here. So what I did is I got a strap. I strapped it here into the front, okay, and I ratcheted it. And so pulling this piece with that, because this thing is leaning against it here, so if this goes forward, this will go forward, and ratchet it about 1/2 inch more than I can do with my hand, and it dropped perfectly. I had to take this bolt off in order to get this out of the way, this gas pedal out of the way. I had to take this bolt off, but here you go. Bolts right here for the floor. Get these first, bolt these first, and then get these set. Make sure you get this one on here too, so do that on both sides. Here's the floor main bolt here with the rubber, and then let's see, rubber, and then washer nut. All right, so joystick. Here's the joystick. One thing that I just learned is don't be in a hurry installing these bolts. Make sure you attach it here, okay, first, and then loosen these guys, but have the nuts not on it, but loosen these, okay, so it can this cable can go up and down a little bit. All right, do this first, and then try to push this in, because these are very, very hard to bend. And then get the bottom nuts, bolts on, and then the nut is here, but the bottom bolts on, and then the top. So that's how I had to do it. Here's your right console. Here's your brake, park lock on these bolts. And then you'll have to take these off in order to remove this. But here we go. These big bolts go in here. All right, and then this boot has these nut washer things right here that locks. I'm gonna clean this up a little bit, but that goes underneath of it, engages that. But yeah, that's how far I got right now. It's kind of slow because I have to put all these bolts back and make sure I don't miss anything. So it's a slow process. It takes a little time. It's not as fast as I want it, but yeah, so far the progress is pretty good. Here's the progress. I got the right side done. Now got the left side done. Here's the left console that you have to remove in order to remove the floor because of this lip. You can't just lift this floor up because this top plate is in the way on both sides, so you have to remove this. Just remove these bolts on all these bolts. Remove the boot, just pull it up over this, leave this intact, and then there'd be bolts underneath the boot to remove this metal plate. So that's how you remove the top of this, and then you can remove the floor. The seat is holding on to these bolts here, and then this attaches to the cab. So I'll do this later. What I want to point out going to the floor, so this plate, cover plate, needs to be bolted 1, 2, 3 first, okay, before you get these bolted, okay, down. So make sure you get these done and then secure these bolts, because the alignment of these bolts are really hard set, and they're exactly actually and so you got to attach this piece before you get these secured, and then before you get this guy in. So yeah, I got the seat in. Next is I think I'll do the battery box next. Right now it's easier to do the battery box than when I'm gonna have a cab on. Battery box next, and I believe after that I'm gonna try to get the cab on here. Well, that's the idea. So this is what it looks like so far. I got the cab installed a couple days ago using this made up scaffolding crane. Okay, it worked out really well. No problems, no issues. First thing you want to do is make sure this thing goes into the rubber. Okay, get these set first before you get the bottom lowered, I mean the front lowered. Okay, and then we have bolts in here, right there. Those secure the floor. When you get the cab on, the floor is going to be a little lower. It's not leveled with the green bottom edge of the cab, so you have to put a jack and jack it up and get these screws in first, okay, before you do anything else. Get that in on each side and then get the cab in. What you have to be mindful of is the upholstery here. It can catch on the upholstery and rip it. So this side is really nice. I am able to manage it really nicely here, as you can see right there. But the other side pulled on the lever and ripped some of it. I mean, it's not too bad. It got a little bit of ripped on the bottom. No big deal. I'll fix it. And then what else I want to show you? Make sure you seal the joint, the cracks. I just use some aluminum tape here and just put it on here. Some of the areas you have to caulk, like the bottom here, caulk the ends at the edges here, so you don't get water from underneath coming into the cab and all this stuff, nonsense like this. So it dried out, so I can put the floor in. Yeah, so put your black sealant on there, and then put the sealant on here too. I don't know, I didn't do a good job, but down there too, you put a sealant bead of sealant in there. And then let's see, hook up your 2 hoses to the tank, okay, which are right there for your fuel lines. Hook those up. There's a power for, I believe, lights or something. There's a power wire. Hook that up too. These, I believe, needs to be torqued at like 130 foot-pounds. I have to do those yet, but yeah, let's see, I put some grease in here. You want to do that too while the tires are off. Here's your, so next process is get the liquid in. I got the antifreeze in. So this is what I purchased from John Deere right here, good stuff. And then I got the antifreeze in already. And then the hydraulic oil is right down here. This is what I purchased from John Deere. Okay, put that into here. That's next. So that's the next step I need to do, is put the hydraulic oil, and then I'll need to have it crank up, turn on, and then have the hydraulic circulate, and then I have to bleed the brakes, which are those little right there, those little what do I call it, bleeding screws, whatnot. You put a little clear PVC, not PVC, rubber tubing, and then you know, you get a jar and have that. You gotta push on the pedal, pump the pedal, and then just like you do a car, bleed on each side. That one, and here too, right there, as you can see, it's hard to see right there, that guy right there, see that? That's another one where I need to bleed the brakes. So of course there's hydraulic pump in the transmission, and so it would pump the oil into this box here, okay, and this is where your brakes are at, and then it's you have to bleed it on the other side. So you gotta run it, let it fill up, and then you have to bleed it, and then you have to bleed the gas using this right here. Have to bleed the gas out of the lines and everything like that. So that's my next step, is to bleed the system, fill the liquids up, get everything on there, get the battery on there, get this tractor running, and then I'll put the hood on it. Right now I have the hood off, so it doesn't get in my way. But yeah, so this is what the AC lines look like right down here. Okay, so you gotta make sure you replace the O-rings in these guys so it won't leak. Okay, get yourself a bunch of cable, wire cable ties. Get that nice secured. Oh, I still have to put the front differential or shaft on the bottom there. I have not done that yet, but that's no big deal. Let's see what else I want to show you. Yeah, so far so good. No issues with the cab. Went in really nicely. I'm surprised. Oh, the issue was with these tires. Took me about 1 hour a piece to put these in. These tires, this one especially, and the other one too, are filled with water, probably like antifreeze substance. And they're very heavy. I have a smaller 30 horsepower tractor, and the loader would not lift these, so I had to drag them. And I had a hard time installing these tires, because you can't just turn this tire, it's so heavy, and you gotta get one bolt on. If you get a hole, matching hole, you're lucky. And then what I did is I put a pry bar on this 6x6 underneath the tire, pushed on a pry bar to rotate this tire slightly to align the bolt pattern. It was difficult. I tell you, these things, make sure it doesn't fall on you, it'll crush you. It's probably 1,000 pounds each. So same thing, this thing was so heavy, it's ridiculous. And I understand because of, you know, needs to be heavy, all the attachments and things like that. But yeah, these tires are crazy heavy. So this is the status. Pretty much done. I'll continue after I get it all put together. I'll do a final video of this thing running and pretty much conclude this video. So hopefully you learn something and they'll help you out to do some kind of project like this at home. Thanks for watching. I started up after about 2 hours of bleeding the fuel line. I had such a hard time getting the fuel into the system. I even had to undo this bolt right here to bleed it. Yeah, so I did the plunger thing. I did this plunger up and down hill. It was tough. I had to remove this, make sure I had fuel in here. It was empty. And then I had to bleed through this valve here. But I don't know, I pumped probably like more than 100 times to get it going. Like I said, it took forever to get the fuel into the system because I drained all lines when I removed, when I took this cab apart. Yeah, so it started right up after they got the fuel going in here. I see it dripping. I tightened that bolt up, and then it started right up. I'm trying to warm it up a little bit so we get the antifreeze going through the system, and I'm gonna get the hydraulic and brakes bleeded next.
Finally, the tractor is fixed. Yay! Look at it go.
The tractor is done. I test drove it. Everything's working perfectly. Brakes now work nicely. I had to bleed them. I used my daughter to press on the brakes and hold, and while she was holding, see that right there, the nipple right there, bleeding nipple on each side. Unscrew it, let the air out, screw it back, she pumps, 10 times or whatnot, and bleeded the brakes. Good brakes. So everything works good. I'm glad it turned out very nicely. Now my next task is to get the loader on. Okay, so you got your front bracket here, you got your bolts, and then right here, and then to here. I want to put in the railing first, okay, and then the loader. That's my next project, and should be able to get that done here in a couple hours. Yeah, and I'm done. So that's my John Deere 5010 series tractor. Hopefully this video helped you. If you have any questions, reach out to me. And I have some parts for the back axle and some other things. So, I wanted to also tell you I went back and checked the required torque for these, 150. Of course, I don't have a wrench that's 150 foot-pounds, so I just use an extension bar and cranked it down as tight as I could. It's good enough, plus or minus. Okay. All right, thanks for watching the video. Hopefully it's helpful. John Deere 5010 project.